do. But on the other hand, they feel like they need to do it on their own, but they can't. And they're actually ticked off with you that, in fact, you'd make a suggestion, but yet they need to depend on you. This is what you find here. I call these personalities twisted. They give you these double messages. They'll ask you to do one thing, but then they'll say, I'll forget it then, if you don't automatically jump to their request. So conflicted, irritable, hostile, negativistic, they will run against the grain. These are the types of individuals you do not want working in an organization. No matter what you do, no matter how you try to accommodate them, they're always complaining about things and they're disgruntled. They feel unappreciated and they wind up pouting. If they don't get their way, they wind up pouting. Maybe this is striking a chord with perhaps some people that you know. They're constantly disillusioned. People are always letting them down. And so they tend to vacillate on the one hand. If they're feeling really guilty, they may be compliant. And when they're angry, they become oppositional. So this is what you find. It's not an official category. It's personality disorder not otherwise specified. Some have suggested that this is an excellent predictor of individuals that tend to lose control over their emotions. And some have indicated that it's an indicator of serious psychiatric illness. I'm not sure if I absolutely agree with that, because I've seen cases of people being negativistic, but not necessarily having some sort of serious psychiatric illness. According to Milan, the two main things we find here is negativistic personalities. They're irritable and they are discontented with themselves. The problem is they're not necessarily motivated to change anything about themselves. You ever watched that movie 9.5 Weeks with Kim Basinger, Mickey Rourke? It's been suggested that she has some features of a masochistic type of personality. Masochistic personalities are self-defeating, as they're called in some circles. They're very effacing, servile. They blame themselves for things which really are not their responsibility. Defeatist, self-condemning. They don't believe that they should have good things in their life, or if positive things are occurring, they think it's just all going to go sour anyway. So they're very self-sacrificing. They're martyr-like. And some of the measures of self-defeating PD, in fact, there's very few of them, by the way, that actually assess self-defeating or masochistic personality. It's not very well validated. This doesn't mean that it's not valid. It's just saying that there isn't a lot of research behind this. And given all the controversies with the category, individuals tend not to research it. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's a lot like dependent personality. So a lot of the features are similar to it. If you encounter a client that's like this, I would predict that there's a high probability that they're being victimized in some way. They will endure abuse for years on end. These are the types of individuals where they may have a way out, but they choose not to take the way out. They're in this relationship. It's like they want to cure this person that they happen to be with, when in fact the person will never be cured. These are individuals that have dysphoric mood, meaning it's not outright depression, but they feel bad generally. And it could be that maybe by doing these martyr-like behaviors that they feel good about themselves. They also see themselves as undeserving of the good things that happen. Of course, we're familiar with Fox Mulder from the X-Files. He certainly has paranoid types of features. Paranoid types are very guarded, defensive, distrustful. They feel like they're being persecuted by the world. Getting in an argument with somebody who's paranoid is a knotted forest that you cannot get out of. And they're very rational, and they have their ideas very clearly worked out. And before you know it, you have in fact done something wrong. In the words of Michael Stone, it's actually one of my favorite authors. Actually, I would recommend one of his books. It's called Abnormalities of Personality. If you ever get a chance to read that, and I don't recommend books too often, it's excellent. He says that being married to a paranoid person is like perpetually being in the defendant's box. Imagine your life, court trials. You're in the box and you're being asked questions. That's what it's like to be married to an individual that's paranoid. You ever watch Deep Space Nine? The Ferengi are very paranoid as a species. So this is why I have Quark up here. If you ever get a chance to watch Deep Space Nine and the Ferengi, you'll see what I mean. They're quite paranoid. They're Paranoid types are hypervigilant. They're always looking for, how do I put it? They're the type of individuals that seem to be reading between the lines. And they're looking for things which, in fact, potentially are not there. The interesting thing about being paranoid is if you have a touch of it, it's actually good. When you look at police detectives, as an example, a touch of paranoia can be a very adaptive type of thing. You can imagine being a soldier and having a touch of paranoia. This could be a very adaptive thing as well. Paranoid types are sensitive. They're thin-skinned individuals, can be very argumentative. These are the types of individuals that you do not want as next-door neighbors. They will sue you for putting the garbage out too early in the morning. In fact, I would imagine that if you went to the courthouse and you looked at on the sheer number of lawsuits which have been brought together by frequency, you could identify a whole slew of paranoid personalities right off the bat. As a result, you do not want to be hiring. You do not want to be working with these types of individuals. They get very annoyed with other people. When other people exhibit any sort of weakness, this is seen as shameful on their part. You may even see aspects of grandiosity when they're in a really good mood, bragging, but usually there's this edgy defensiveness which is taking place. And because they're paranoid, they're secretive, so they don't tell you things. They may give you part of a picture, but they'll never tell you the whole thing here. And according to Theodore Milan, this is considered one of the more serious types of personality disorders. They tend to be very suspicious and very defensive. We have a schizotypal personality, and here, of course, we have the great Robert De Niro playing this role in Taxi Driver. And so in this show, the main character is Travis Bickle. And so he's a taxi driver. He winds up driving around, takes all these different types of shifts. We'll be taking a look at that movie in this class when we get to this topic. They're very eccentric, bizarre types of individuals. Odd, peculiar, really disconnected from society. In fact, when you watch the movie, and it was filmed in the 1970s before De Niro was a big star, although he just does a fantastic job in it. You can even see by the way that this individual is dressing, very abnormal, or I shouldn't say abnormal, unusual ways of dressing. The dress even isn't that big of a deal. Some of the things that he says in the film give you kind of a sense of the schizotypal way of being. You know that line? The line is, "You talking to me? You talking to me?" It's from that movie. And so we're going to take a look at it. In that scene, he's planning to assassinate this presidential candidate. So he's talking in the mirror to himself. And this dialogue is going on and on. "You talking to me? I don't see you talking to anybody else. You must be talking to me." So he's got this imaginary thing going on. Schizotypal personalities, they're just odd and strange in sort of how they wind up presenting. They are unplugged from society in a lot of ways. And in fact, in Taxi Driver, I think it's Sybil Shepherd, she starts talking about Chris Christopherson. Now, for you guys, you probably wouldn't have much exposure to him, but if you were younger during the 70s, everybody would know who Chris Christopherson happens to be. In the movie, he has no idea what this means. So there's these potential cognitive impairments, might have magical type of thinking. They're self-absorbed in their own thoughts. They may have an idea of reference. What do we mean by an idea of reference? An idea of reference is where you see somebody, let's say a television newscaster, talking about something, and you draw this inference that they're talking about you. That is an idea of reference. So they're detached, socially isolated. Another interesting thing about these personalities is they are very self-conscious, and when you're interviewing them, they're constantly anxious. They're shaking the entire time. They don't like having those types of dialogue with individuals. The two main areas here, Milan describes it as an autistic kind of way of engaging, kind of like a flat and